Hi, this is Nina with Parish Learning Zone. Today, when I was thinking about what to talk about during this live video, I thought back to topics that I've discussed with parents and with teachers over the last several weeks during this unusual time. And something that kept coming up over and over and over again and was a common theme in my discussions with parents and with teachers is the topic of motivation. So I thought that I would talk about that a little bit today. So when we talk about motivation, it's sort of a tricky subject because we're thinking about the way that we react to things, which is based on our feelings. So we're feeling a certain way, and that causes us to react in a certain way as parents. And right now, during this time, as parents, a lot of us, most of us, all of us are feeling very overwhelmed and out of control, and we are dealing with a situation that is unprecedented. And a lot of us are taking on a lot of additional roles. Not only are we doing our full-time job, we also are taking on the second full-time job of being the administrator of our children's education. And a lot of us have a third full-time job of running a household with lots of new, unusual rules that none of us fully understand. That a lot of the rules seem to contradict each other. And a household that needs to be completely sterile at all times. And so, understandably, we are all feeling a little bit overwhelmed and stressed. And on top of that, we are trying to figure out as parents and as educators how to motivate our kids to continue with their school and with their education, which is now taking place at home. And, I'm hearing from teachers that a lot of students just aren't showing up. And I'm hearing about the difficulty of, getting students motivated when there are not necessarily any grades and their participation is optional. And I'm hearing that frustration from parents and from teachers. So that's something that we're all going through together. And so I thought that it would be a good topic to discuss today. And anytime that a parent is dealing with a problem with their child, so their child has encountered a problem or a stressful situation in general, and in this situation, I see parents understandably react in 3 different ways. And sometimes, a lot of us have a default way that we normally react all the time. And some of us waver back and forth between several ways that we react based on how we're feeling. And one way, the first way that I see parents react is to make an excuse or to try to excuse their child from the difficult situation. And we can all understand, all of us that are parents or who are teachers who have been with a child in a difficult situation, we can understand this reaction. And I can empathize with parents who are going through this because a lot of times our first reaction is to swoop in and try to save our children from the pain or the difficulty that they're experiencing. And so what the excusing or the excuse behavior would look like, what that reaction would look like, is to say, we are done with this. We are not doing this anymore. We're out. And then the parent excuses the child from that difficult situation. They tell them that they do not have to participate anymore, and we are done. We're done with this. School is over for the year. And I understand why parents do that. I'm also a parent, and sometimes parents are feeling very overwhelmed by a difficult problem and by seeing their children experience difficulty. And so, from feeling overwhelmed, their reaction is to try to excuse their child or to take their child out of that difficult situation. But the fact is, we can't really save our children from their problems and from all difficult situations. And when we try to react and when we react in that way, it sends the message, and the message that it sends is probably not the message that we're intending. It sends the message to the child that we can't do this, you can't do this. And instead, we want to send a message of you can do difficult things. So when a situation becomes difficult, we don't want to swoop in and take our child out of that situation, because we want to send them the message that they can do difficult things and they can handle difficult things. Because what we see over time, if kids have parents who constantly react by taking them out of difficult situations or saving them from difficult situations, is that when they encounter a difficult situation, they shut down or they check out, or they stop showing up. And um, that behavior is not what we're looking for in the long term. In the short term, it might feel good to leave or check out. And sometimes in a crisis situation, there is value in stepping back and in taking a look at the best way to deal with this situation moving forward, because it might look different from our regular normal. Our old normal might not match our new normal, and that's not what I'm talking about here. There is definitely comfort in stepping back in a crisis and in examining a routine, and making some changes. But when we tell our kids that they no longer have to participate and we excuse them from the difficult situation, they develop a behavior where when they encounter a problem, they shut down. And that's not what we want in the long term. The second response that I see a lot, and we as parents do, is to take over. And I'm sure that I know that I can relate to this, and I'm sure a lot of parents out there can relate to this, that we see a problem or we see a difficult situation, and our first response is to manage that situation, because we're feeling out of control, right? As a lot of us are right now. And so we think, well, I know how to manage this situation. And then we jump in and we take over the situation. And so this also, although understandable, it also sends the message that you can't do this to the child. You can't do this, let me help you. So instead of, sorry, not let me help you, let me do it. You can't do this, let me do it. So instead of, excusing them from the situation where you are sending the message, you can't do this, let's leave. You're sending the message when you take over as a parent, we're sending the message, you can't do this, let me do it instead. And, it's, although completely understandable and we've all done it before, it results in a child that encounters the problem and then feels helpless and looks to others when they have an issue. They look to others to solve the problem. They look to others to make a list. They look to others to come up with solutions. And I don't think that this is the long-term result that we want either. We don't want a child that when they have a problem, they look to others to solve the problem and feel helpless. So that doesn't feel like the best solution, or the best way to react to a problem or a difficult situation either. And so the third way that I see parents reacting to a difficult situation is by being supportive. And although um, it is easier said than done, especially when a lot of us are feeling a huge amount of stress ourselves. And sometimes it's our natural reaction to jump in and try to save our children from the problems, or to jump in and take over whatever the situation is so that we can manage it. Neither of those things result in children who are motivated to roll up their sleeves and conquer their own problems themselves. Because both of those first two things send the message that to the child that they can't do it, and either they need to leave or someone else needs to do it for them. But when a parent is supportive, they step back from the situation, and not to be confused with not involved. A supportive parent is there and they provide a temporary support during a difficult time. So this doesn't look like taking over the problem for the child or trying to take the problem away from the child. It looks like providing a scaffold or a bridge, a temporary support during a difficult time, where the parent, as the older person who has probably been through, well, in this situation, maybe not something similar, but certainly is, has more life experience, is there with the child in their problem or in their difficult situation and says, this is really hard. It's hard for me, and it's hard for you, and it's hard for everyone. But we're going to sit down together, and we can do hard things. You can do hard things. We're going to figure out how to do it. We're going to make a plan. And so the parent figures out where the child is right now and what they can do, what the child can do to start moving forward and tackling the problem or the difficult situation that's in front of them. And so what this might look like is that if you're feeling overwhelmed and your child is feeling overwhelmed, that you ask the question, what can we do to make this situation more manageable? And with school, online school, it might be that tackling it all at once is not manageable. And so you can figure out, your child can figure out what you can do to make the situation more manageable. And then it might mean that if things seem like they're just completely out of control and not the way that they normally are, and you want to get back to a routine, what is a routine that could be manageable for you and for your family? And if you're feeling out of control, instead of stepping in and taking over, it might be sitting with your child and thinking about baby steps. So teaching your child to take baby steps, because that's what we all have to do when we're in a new situation or in a crisis. What is one small step that we can take today? And by sitting with your child and providing support, acting as a temporary scaffold or bridge while they get used to the new normal. Although I know that sometimes it's really difficult to step back and provide a support instead of jumping in or just pulling out completely from the situation and excusing yourself from everything that's difficult. When we provide a support for our child and we act as a scaffold for them or a bridge, they learn to take small steps to begin to solve their own problems. And what that does is it teaches them a skill called self-efficacy. And all that that means is that they realize that what they do and the actions that they take, those small steps, produce outcomes. So they tie their small steps to their positive outcomes. And that makes all the difference in motivation, because when we teach our children that the small steps that they take, or the big steps later on, over time, produce outcomes that not only affect us, but affect other people, that helps to foster intrinsic motivation. And it helps us to know that we can take a little step, asking the question, what's a small step that you can take today to get towards where you want to be, helps to foster the motivation that we need in order to continue to move forward during a difficult time. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today and to tune in and listen. And I look forward to hearing your comments and questions and concerns and things that have worked for you in the comments below this live video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.